Hi everybody. So this is the help video for people who are struggling with the randomly random task. Now what we have when you start this is a blank file, or partially completed file rather, from this link which I already have open here. Now when you open that link, you need to click see inside, and you'll see in the top right hand corner a button that says remix. So if you then click that, it makes you a copy on your own Scratch profile, which you'll then be able to save and you'll be able to edit at home as well. So that's the first part. The first thing we're going to do is to create some different costumes for one sprite that are going to be different eyes. So what you're going to do first of all is create a new sprite called eyes, which you can see on the right here, and we only want to start off by making 3 of them just to keep it simple. We can add more in later. So on my Scratch project, I'm going to click the paintbrush next to paint new sprite, and I'm going to rename it before I even do any more. So I click on the blue eye and rename it to eyes, and then I want to paint 3 different eye costumes. So I'll use the circle tool just to draw some big eyes. If you know how to copy and paste, you could use that as a shortcut, and just use the tools and the fill tool to make them look however you imagine. Fill them in white. Now it's really important that straight away you position the eyes in the correct place. Use the shrink tool to resize them to a reasonable size, and make sure that you don't move those things again. If you look at this little tool here, this costume center, you'll see that the eyes are just slightly off center, which is a bit silly, so you don't have to move that, but it would help. If you get errors later, you might want to experiment with it. However, I have a little cheat that I do. What I do is I right click and duplicate the costume, and then I just make changes to it. So if I use the selection tool, I can move the eyes around, or I can erase them. Use the eraser tool to erase any pieces that aren't important, and then we could use the line tool to draw a very terrible winking emoji, and then we can duplicate it again to make even more changes to it. And you could use the paintbrush tool and maybe a different colour to put an eye patch on there instead, and you can use the paint bucket to fill that in. So anything you want to create is fine, use your imagination, but go for 3 different designs at the beginning just to get started. So there we have my 3 different costumes, and that's part 1 complete. Next, we want to create a button, a clickable sprite that's only going to have 1 costume, and it's going to have a piece of code on there. So you can see here we want to create a new sprite. We're going to call it random button, and we're going to write the words randomize on there. So if we go down to the new sprite panel here and click paint new sprite, and it was called random button, I believe. Again, the name's not important, but you can see the name, I got that from here. And I want to create a rectangle shape. I'll just fill it in. You can have circular buttons if you wish. It's not important that it's the same shape as mine. I'll put some text on there so that people know what it does when they click it, and then I'm going to move it on the main screen out of the way of a Mr. Potato Head. And again, you can put it anywhere. You can shrink it if you find it's too big, just to give you more room for the rest of your drawings. Now the next part of task 2, after we've designed and created the button, is to put code on there. So this code goes on the randomize button only. And we've got some pseudocode here, which is a programmer's planned out what this button should do when it's clicked. And what it's going to do is it's basically going to yell out a message. It's going to broadcast so that the other sprites know that it's been clicked, that they know the user wants some changes to happen. So we get that code from the similar one. So if we click on scripts, making sure we're on the button, we go to events, and you'll see when this sprite is clicked, broadcast, and we want to click the drop down to create a new message in there, which is called change. Now, as long as it's a sensible name, it doesn't have to be change. You could actually make the broadcast randomized, but whatever makes sense is usually the correct answer. So that's us now got the randomize button. Then you could see that when we click it, nothing actually happens yet because we haven't told Mr. Potato Head or our costume sprites how to react. So task 3 is completed on the eyes sprite. You can see there's no code there yet for it, so make sure you do it on there and not on the button. So we want this sprite to react when it receives the broadcast. So we've got a plan in pseudocode here. It says when I receive change, set the costume from random number 1 to number of costumes. So you can see code here, which is obviously different from this plan because I didn't want to give the answer away, and plus you're going to make new costumes anyway, so it will be different. So on this same events panel, you can see when I receive change, the set costume was purple. So if we have a look for that there, and we'll see we have switched to costume number 3, which won't work because it just every time you click the button, it will switch to costume 3. And we can get the pick random from 1 to 10 from in here. Now we have 1, 2, 3 costumes, so we obviously want to pick a random from 1 to 3. And now when we click the randomize button, it's going to change depending on what the random number is each time. Now later when you add in more costumes, it will be much better because there's a higher chance of each time it changes. But at the beginning, you have only to create 3 costumes on each sprite, and you're going to have 3 different clothing sprites or options. So the next one could be moustaches, hair and hats. It's important that you have 3 different sprites with 3 different costumes before you move on to the challenges. Now there's no help given for these parts because these are the people who are working at a higher level and should be completing these tasks independently. And then there's even more advanced challenges for people to create other code when some of the code examples are given there. So well done if you can get on to the advanced challenges and complete.